Yo, big up, Wagwan, Y where you deal with, where you depan, up top, blessings. We're there back again for another one. You don't know how it go. As you guys can see in the title, and as you guys can expect after a match preview, we did the preview for the Super Cup final against Sevilla. We're here for the match review, the breakdown, and to give you guys my thoughts. And also for you guys, share your thoughts with me as well in the comment section about what we saw in the game yesterday. I wish it was on a more positive note because I do have a bit of things to get into, and there are a few good talking points as well. But there are a lot of stuff yesterday I saw that I was definitely not pleased with. And let's just say if you are not watching this video live and you see it on the review or replay, and it is less than an hour, mission complete. Definitely mission complete. Um, as it relates to the actual game, though, my prediction for that game was 3-1 Manchester City. And we already have our first commenter here, Elijah Lawson. This brother always early. Much respect for you being here. And he says, we didn't play well. That's why we need Paqueta and Doku. But Wagwan, I believe that's what you meant to say. But, bro, honestly, watching the game yesterday, you remember how I told you that I would prefer we look at different targets than Doku and Paqueta specifically? I like the profiles, but for the specific players, I have questions there. Not to say that I wouldn't take them, but after watching that game yesterday, if we had even one of them, trust me, that game would have been much, much better. So right now, I'm further on the Paqueta and Doku hype train. I think if we could get both of them in before the window closes, that would be a really good window for us. So I definitely see what Pep on the board is cooking with looking at those two players. But honestly, for me, I'm looking at that game yesterday, and I'm kind of disappointed in the performance. I expected much better. I can't lie, and I'm not saying that we need to always play at our scintillating best on every match day, but if we're being honest, keep it at bills. The level that we played at yesterday was not good enough for me. I don't think that was Manchester City's real level. And I get that the season is early, players are still um, gathering or generating their fitness. The chemistry still needs to build. Pep slightly tweak the system from last season. Again, it's not exactly how we finished the last season we're playing now. The personnel in there is a little bit different. Obviously, all of these things take time. And that's why I'm not ringing alarm bells. We're not in a crisis. It's nothing crazy like that. However, I do think that that doesn't change the fact that we didn't play well. It's just a simple fact we did not play the game well. Um, yeah, and I don't want to get into this whole like we should be glad that we're in the Super Cup in the first place because we used to be in League One, and the fact that we're in the Super Cup, win or lose, you have to win either the Champions League or the Europa League to get there. We won the Champions League, so of course I'm proud to even be in the Super Cup competition. That's why I wanted to win it. But when we got there, for me, I think Sevilla was the better team on the day. I genuinely can't lie. Um, if we're looking at the circumstances around the game, I mean, I guess you could come up with excuses as to why this was the case. But like I said, man, Sevilla, like people were saying, it was hot in Greece. I can see that. I can understand that as well. But at the end of the day, man, Sevilla were good compared to the last two times we played them in the Champions League last season. This is a much improved performance. And if we compare our performance then to now, there was definitely a bit of regress in there. Like we did not play as well as we did against them in the group stages. And like I said, for the general construct of the season, I think we can still go on to have a really great season. I'm not worried about what happens for the rest of the season. I just want us to nip this type of performance in the bud right now to prepare for other games later down the line coming down. And I'm sure that Pep would not be looking at that match and be saying, like that was a great performance. We 1-1 flattered Sevilla. No, they for the most part of the game, they look like the better team. Their build up was much more effective, and they created some clear cut chances in there. In the series could have had a hat trick. Let's be real, like other players had opportunities that they could have capitalized on as well. And Ederson was one of our best players in the game. He definitely came up big for us, and he came up with a lot of crucial saves. A lot of people say they kicked it right at him, but come on, man. The man play good. Give him props. If Ederson wasn't in the goal, that could have been more than only one goal conceded, in my opinion. Ederson's good game for me came to an end at the shootout. None of us really expected Ederson to pull out any massive heroics in the shootout. Realistically, we've seen him in enough shootouts to know that isn't one of his strong suits. But regardless, I think he definitely had a good game. He was one of the players that stood up and had one of his better performances, or one of the better performances of all our players. If you look at last season, we went on to win a treble, but the start of the last season was not one of our best starts. We already know that we don't start the season well as Manchester City, but last season the start that we had was amongst, I don't even want to say one of the worst ones. The performances, it was some of the worst starts that we had. The results were good though. People weren't really complaining when we were beating Nottingham Forest 6-0. That was one of our better performances. But in games like Everton away, Everton at home, I mean, and Villa away, those are frustrating games, and it was just down to us not being the best versions of ourselves, or certain players not having a particular good game on those days. That's why I can look at those games and say, you know what, we didn't play well on those days. That's what I'm trying to do today. I'm not trying to get on the team too much and say, oh, we were just terrible, and we couldn't come up with anything. That's not what I'm trying to do here. It doesn't dampen our season at all. I'm just saying there was definitely improvements that we could have and should have seen on the pitch in terms of performances. Elijah says Ederson's birthday today. What? Me never know that either. I can't lie. Happy birthday, Ederson. Trust me, man. And that's probably why he came up so big in the game. Like, he seemed like he was one of those players taking it very seriously. And in the first half, I feel like for us that was a much better performance than what I saw in the second half. And I can't lie. After the second half, I completely forgot a lot of the stuff that happened in the first half. But that just speaks to how like drastic the change was in terms of our performance. And Sevilla got better in the second half, even though they only scored in the first half. But that first 15-20 minutes, they created more chances than they did in the entirety of the first half. So that's stuff that we need to talk about. And I do want to keep this Sevilla preview review short and sweet, because I also want to put the Newcastle preview in this video as well. I'll probably make that a separate video after the fact, but for those guys who are here now, they can get my thoughts on the preview right away and instantly. You understand? Um, but yeah, big up to Ederson, man. Happy birthday to him as well. Is he? I'm not sure if he's 30 or 31 now, or if he's hit the 30s yet. He might still be in his 20s. I just remember when we signed him and he was like 25 or so, and in my head he's just always around that 25 to 28 age range. I didn't realize he might be in his 30s now. But yeah, throughout the game, like, I can only remember a few clear-cut chances we created. I'm looking at Cole Palmer's cross in that first 10 minutes. I think it was Ake who got ahead to it, and Bono made the save. We got a corner from that play. Later in the game, I think Foden had a free kick on that left-hand side, and again, Ake got to it again. I remember him doing that twice. And both of them, he headed down into the ground, and the second one, again, Bono saved and pushed over the bar. Possibly, if we got one of those, it could have been a slightly different game. But compared to how easily Sevilla was cutting through our defense, and particularly, I think our defense didn't have the best of games. That's probably why the match looked so imbalanced, or the performance looked so imbalanced. But Sevilla already gave them props in the preview for their ability to create chances, and in the series for being the most clinical player on their team. But in that second half, man, the chances were just popping up. They were creating like two chances in the space of 5 minutes. Like, I don't want to see us playing like that. I always speak about our defense with pride. I love our defenders, especially Ruben Diaz. Everybody know I'm a general that, but we clearly missed him back there. And it's like there was no communication between Akanji, Walker, and Ake, because it just, whichever side they took, it just completely broke down. I don't think Vardial had much to do in the game. I feel like that's probably a good thing. because all our defenders seem to have had an off day at that point in the second half. Vardy wasn't really involved. He wasn't really making a lot of mistakes. But and he was inverting as well. He wasn't really contributing too much going forward either. But I would still say he had an okay game. I don't think Kyle Walker, Akanji, or Ake had an okay game. I think three of them had poor games. And partly it was, I think the performance that we had was a bit hindered by Sevilla's setup. Because if you look at how Sevilla set up in the game, they had all their players just outside the edge of their box. They weren't pressing us. They were letting us have the ball at the edge of their final third, and they were letting us have the ball in the wide areas. They were just defending their box and keeping as much players as possible on the likes of Erling Haaland, Phil Foden, and Mateo Kovacic. All times they had 2 to 3 players on them marking them. At one point, I saw Kovacic with 4 players around him, as a matter of fact, when he tried to make a run and give Cole Palmer an extra option. So it seemed clear that their game plan was to limit whoever could be chance creators and keep the ball in the wide areas because they know how we play with inverted wingers. I think personally, if we played more like how Sevilla played, get the ball down the wings and then cross it into to end the series, us crossing into Haaland, we would have had a much better game. Because I don't know if you guys saw Marco at the World Cup, but Enesiri broke a record for the highest jump, I think, in football or World Cup history, 132 of them. But I think they were comparing it to Ronaldo's jump that he made, which I remember he was at Juventus, and I think that broke the record for highest jump in football. And they were comparing it to that and saying in the series was higher. So I think that was the highest jump in football from a player. And the goalkeeper also made a jump for that same ball. In the series got higher than the goalkeeper who he was using his hands and still scored the ball. So a player like him receiving crosses in the box is always going to be dangerous. I don't even blame Ederson for the goal because it rifled off his head. He was about outside the 6 yard box and it came off the post and went in. So I don't think there's anything Ederson could have done to stop that. I think you stop that by nipping it in the bud in the build up. If you go back and watch the build up to that goal, it was atrocious, man. Like the whole midfield was so open, and I think Rodri was in their final third as well. So when Bono played the ball straight down the middle, there was none of our midfielders there to intercept it. I think it went past Kovacic, who was next to a Sevilla player. It went past both of them, and the next player that got it from Sevilla, there was no City player around him, bar the defenders in front of him. And it was 5v4. They went out with the numbers advantage, played it out to the wide area. I think it was Acuna who whipped it in, and they got their first goal within 30 minutes. At that point in time, we were threatening, but it seemed like we were just teasing with the goal. And I like to see when Manchester City are more ruthless in not only scoring, but in terms of chance creation as well. I did not see that. I really did not see that. I'm especially disappointed with. I don't want to say disappointed. I'm disappointed with the backline's performance mainly, but I do think the wingers' performances were a bit underwhelming. Speaking on Cole Palmer real quick, don't get the wrong idea. I think Cole Palmer had a good game. I don't think he had a great game though. I know he scored and he created a few opportunities in between, but for the amount of ball and touches that both wingers were getting, both him and Grealish, I think he should have created more. And there were very, very dry periods in the game where Cole Palmer was there and he was just unable to get past his man and actually create something for Haaland. The only person who I remember actively getting the ball to Haaland was Kovacic. And Kovacic is not the guy I want to be seeing playing the ball into Haaland because that's not his game. But he was the only one connecting with him. Haaland had a poor game as a result because there was nobody getting the ball to him. He didn't really have much service, but that doesn't change the fact that he had a poor game. Grealish, I think Grealish was good in the first half. I think he was kind of doing his thing for the most part. He had that great shot where he had cut in and fired a finish shot over across Bono. Bono made a save though. I think he had good touches aside from that where he had put the ball more centrally for some to set up someone else. But in the second half, he only really came back to life when Pep moved Foden and Kovacic in their central positions, which for me, that was a key move. Big up to Pep for making that decision. That was a key move in the match. Foden linking up with Jack Grealish, going out on that left wing area. I think he feels so comfortable there. And I feel like in the future, we might see Foden playing more left centre mid than he would usually right centre mid. Throughout preseason and, for the first two games that we've seen so far, Sevilla and Burnley, when Foden is on the pitch, he's playing right centre mid. I do think that will change now because that performance on left side was definitely much better. I think when he's playing as a forward, Phil Foden, right wing is more effective than left wing for him, but in the midfield, I think it might be the opposite. I think left centre mid might be where he stakes his claim in the team. Um, Let me see what else do I have here. Yeah, I don't really want to get into deep on the centre backs. Kyle Walker, Akanji, and Ake. All three of them had their moments of just what are you doing, bro? Like interceptions, I'm looking at and I'm saying, oh yeah, definitely they're going to get this. Like stop the cross here, or there was a moment where Kyle Walker saw Bono making a goal kick. He stepped up, left his man, and went to go head the ball out. Then he misses the ball, it went straight over his head, and the same guy who he was marking picks up the ball, drives inside. Akanji steps up. The guy passes basically right over Akanji's foot. He misses it. Doesn't even look like he's trying to intercept it, and then the ball just goes to Enesiri, who is battling with Ake, who again saw the whole thing. I don't even think he said a word to Akanji or Kyle Walker, and then they went on and had another dangerous chance. Say that was not Akanji there. I mean, say that was not Ake there. If Akanji and Kyle Walker are making those types of decisions where, it probably isn't the right move or you should probably opt for a safer option, Ruben Diaz would have been that player to look at them and be that communicator and say, you know what? Position yourself here. Don't go. Your man is right there. Like that type of stuff. Ake was not doing that. It's basically like he was just an accomplice to all of the bad decisions that were being made before that. So it was definitely a frustrating watch defensively, especially where the second half was concerned. I think it was fairly poor. And on another day, like I said, Enesiri could have had a hat trick. For me, he was a bit poor in his finishing for the most part, but he was also the one who scored their one crucial goal. I think on another day we could have definitely been punished for our performances, and I was just hoping and praying that um, performing like that would not cost us the trophy. I didn't want it to go to shootout. We only won the shootout because a guy missed his penalty and hit the crossbar. Do not forget that. It was that because we outplayed them. I'm pretty sure Sevilla would be looking back at that game and feeling very hard done by the result, that they should have capitalized on at least one of their other chances and put the game to bed when they had the chance. But fortunately, luck was on our side this time around, and we got to get by with an underwhelming performance, as what I would personally call it. Um, but yeah, for me, man of the match, I think Rodri had a good game. I don't think he did much in terms of any crucial moments, stopping a goal or creating a goal, anything like that. But in between all of that, I think in the midfield he was definitely our most combative player. He gave us a lot of control in that midfield area, especially when we had possession of the ball. I think positionally, this is one of those games where I can probably look at him and say you could have improved your positioning in this particular game to limit the number of chances that Sevilla had, but I don't even think that's on Rodri. I think Sevilla is just one of those teams that will always create chances. They like to have the ball. They have great players on the ball. I spoke on Rakitic being one of the key players to watch for them. He definitely stepped up in the game as one of those players who was giving them a lot of strength in the midfield. He was everywhere. He was at one point playing right wing, and if you look on the lineup on paper, he was playing in the pivot just in front of the defensive line. So him being all over the pitch like that, I think it definitely gave Sevilla a lot of creative options, and he was definitely working his socks off in the game. Grealish, I think Grealish might still be recouping fitness. Like I said before, I like to see him play again against Newcastle. I think he will because we're kind of short on wingers right now. But yeah, that second half performance was a bit underwhelming. I was definitely looking at him particularly. I know Palmer is a kid. I'm not looking at him to create the chance that wins us a game and saying, you must go out and do this if you're gonna play. But Grealish, I expected him to stand up and even if he's gonna get double teamed the moment he enters into the box, I'd back Grealish every single day of the week to come out of that and create some magic because he's that good. So I think he should take a bit of responsibility for that type of performance, and I'm expecting to see a bit of improvement from him in that regard against Newcastle as well. And it seems like we're doing some good time because it's only 23 minutes in right now, and I think that's we you know what? Before I even move on from Sevilla, let me give some positives. I don't want to just leave it on sour notes. So let me leave it on some positives. Like I said, I think Ederson had a good game. Definitely candidate for man of the match. Only thing that might dampen it would have been the penalty shootout at the end of the game. Rodri, I said before, also had a good game. I like what I was seeing from Rodri. I wish that he did a bit more, but that doesn't mean that he had a bad game necessarily. I think he still had a good game. Um, Kovacic, I think Kovacic was also good. Again, I don't want to. I know a lot of people are blaming Phil Foden and Kovacic, saying they're not ready. Foden isn't ready for the midfield. Kovacic is not really picking up on our system that well at the moment. I don't necessarily think that's the case. I think it was, if you guys watch it again, you'll see that majority of the time there was 2 to 3 players on them, and it's a bit difficult for players who want to have the ball like that and want to have possession in dangerous areas to receive the ball under that much pressure and then create something magical. Probably KDB is the only player in our squad who I would back to still come out of those odds and create a moment of magic. And if we had KDB in the center of the park, the level of respect that I think Sevilla would have gave him would have probably given a bit more space and opportunity for another player, be it Kovacic or Foden, whoever was playing next to KDB, would have had more strength in the game to go out and be that difference maker. But Foden specifically, what I want to a bit, I know I said put more positive, but just a slight criticism on Foden. If you are in a situation like that again, what I would love to see from you next time is drop deeper, like get close to, like get next to Rodri and pick up the ball from there, and then go in, drive into the midfield and create something. That is what David Silva would have done, and this is a player who idolizes David Silva. He said he's his favorite footballer. He grew up watching him play for Manchester City, modeled his game based on David Silva, and he wants to be that type of player for the club in the long term. That's the type of stuff I'll need to see from Phil Foden if that's the case. Like drop deep, collect the ball, and drive into the midfield. Go be that one who is going on to create something. Don't just leave it up to the wingers to go out and be expressive and come up with a cross or beat 2, 3 guys and then get a shot off. I think he could have done a bit more in that regard. Even, if he would have swapped with a Cole Palmer, because we know Cole Palmer can play centrally. He could have also swapped with Palmer, went out on that right wing for 1 or 2 moments in the game and attempted making a difference from there. We know that he was a player that they wanted to definitely mark heavily, as looking on paper, he would definitely be considered our main creative spark in the midfield area before the game was before a ball was kicked. But as a result of that, I think he probably should have tried to go out to one of those areas where they were clearly giving us more space, and maybe not hope that eventually you'll make a run that they don't see, and you'll get a loose pass at the edge of the box and you can create something from there. I don't think you can only leave it up to that chance for them. I need to see you doing a bit more, take up a bit more responsibility as well. I'm fighting in a corner to be the next mainstay in midfield for Manchester City. I want to see, even when we're getting free kicks, KDB is not on the pitch. You should be the one taking up the ball and saying, I want to take this. I want to take majority of the free kicks here. I want to take majority of the corners. I want to take more responsibility in the team to be that creative spark. And that is what's going to help him elevate his game to the next level when he's taking up all these responsibilities. I'm not sure what he would have learned from playing against Sevilla and under those circumstances, but I hope that he does take a lot from it and goes on to improve his game even further. But all in all, Kovacic, Rodri, Ederson, Palmer, good games. Good games from all of them. I think Grealish was okay, Vardial was okay, and I guess it's arguable on Haaland. Like I said, he didn't really get to do anything. He wasn't receiving any of the ball. All the crosses that were coming into the box, none of them went anywhere near him. The one that Cole Palmer eventually scored, I think that was meant for Haaland, and it went so far over his head and then dipped to where Palmer was. Nobody expected that. The goalkeeper didn't. The defenders didn't. I think even Haaland didn't, because when the ball passed him, he looked so deflated, like another cross that's just not going to get to me. It looks like, but fortunately we did capitalize on it, and it was enough for us to go on and claim victory. But just to move on, now we are in the Newcastle section. Manchester City versus Newcastle match preview. Now, I watched that Newcastle game against Aston Villa. They won 5-1. It was the first game of the season, obviously. There's only one game week that has passed. And it was at St. James's Park. So I believe the game started off 1-1 after, Diaby scored. Newcastle had their first goal from what's his name? Sandro Tonali. He made his debut, scored a debut goal, brilliant debut for him because he was brilliant throughout the whole game. Anthony Gordon assisted that, which that I'm looking at that very intently because Gordon is a player who had a bit of an underwhelming season last year. So he has to be one of those players looking to improve on that. He forced his way out of Everton after they narrowly stayed up the season prior, and he got his move to Newcastle, which is now in the Champions League. So, and they paid a lot of money for him, if I remember correctly. I think it was like 60 mil or something like that. So, he has to definitely improve on what he did last season and be that wonder kid that they thought they were signing. So, I'm looking at that assist and I'm saying that's a good first step. Sandro Tonali as well, great positioning, good finish, and he got his first Newcastle goal. Shortly after that, like I said, Diaby got his goal and equalized it. And Alexander Isak, man, yo, Alexander Isak, let me tell you, this youth is going to shock a lot of people this season. Right now, I think he's probably the second best striker in the league. I think he won't, compete with Haaland for the Golden Boot, but I think he'll definitely be the next up for the Golden Boot in that second place. And I think he has a potential of getting close to or over 20 goals. 1 second. But yeah, I think that was a good move from Alexander Isak. Newcastle had their free kick. It was brilliantly worked. We always know Newcastle is one of those teams who on set pieces they are just so dangerous. Like you have to make sure that you are very disciplined as a team when you're defending against a Newcastle set piece. And it wasn't even like a header or anything like that. They played it over, and I think it was Fabian Schär who crossed the ball in for Alexander Isak, who could tuck it away for his first goal of the season as well. Shortly after that, Kansa era, he is roughed up by Isak, and Isak took the ball off him, chipped it over. What's his name? Emi Martinez. The thing is about that finish from Isak though, a lot of players in that position would not chip the ball. I think Haaland would. I think he would, Isak. I don't think a lot of other players in the league would have chipped that ball. They would have tried to shoot it around him. They would have tried to squeeze it near a post. They would have tried to get it between his legs. It seems like when a lot of strikers in the league get in these types of positions, their first thought is, like hit it low and hard, and that's the best opportunity. But players who are a bit more confident in their abilities, like Isak and Haaland, they'll more take the chance of looping the ball over the keeper. And for me, that was the best decision he could have made because Emi Martinez wanted to get low to stop the ball and make himself as big as possible on the ground based on how close Isak was. But Isak is like he read that is probably what the goalkeeper is going to think of doing, and he just loops it right over him. Emi Martinez did not stand a chance. And then the next two goals after that, both a key role by Harvey Barnes, new signing from Newcastle. He's a player I rated at Leicester City. I think he's also a really disrespected player. And I think at Newcastle, at a better team now than Leicester City, he'll have more of an opportunity to show the league his strengths. The assist that he got for Callum Wilson, I think that was brilliantly worked, perfectly timed run. It was just onside, but he did all he needed to do. Brilliant weight of pass. He could have had another one shortly after that, but the pass was not on that one. I think he really messed the pass up, but he made up for it by scoring a goal of his own to make it 5-1. And that's to say, like, Newcastle can threaten from a lot of different places. They had Sandro Tonali scoring his first goal. I almost said Alexandro. I don't know what's going on in my brain, but they had Sandro Tonali scoring a goal, Isak doing a double, including capitalize and forcing a Villa mistake out of a centre back. They also had um what's his name? They also had Callum Wilson coming off the bench as another striker option to Isak, scoring his first goal of the season. And they also had a Harvey Barnes scoring his goal as well. So I think they can hurt us from a lot of different areas. Amiran, I think he had a few good touches in the game as well. However, he was unable to get his name on the on the stat sheet under any asset. And I think we should really be careful in this type of game, especially after a performance like we had against Sevilla. We can't allow Newcastle to face that version of Manchester City on Saturday. So I'm looking at a more improved lineup first and foremost. Obviously, we rotated a bit for the Super Cup. Other players got opportunities. It was still a fairly strong lineup, but still, hopefully, Ruben Diaz is okay to play because I would love to see him back in the back line. I think we'll need him against a team like Newcastle, and I think we'll need him for the first game of the season. Kyle Walker, like I said before, he didn't have the best of games, but I hope to see him start again against Newcastle. He is one of the club captains, if not the first. He's the second captain, and he will be the main captain for a majority of the season now because Kevin De Bruyne is out until 2024. So he'll when he's playing, he's going to have the armband. So if he's fit, I want him to be playing, and I want to see better performances from Kyle Walker. He showed us what he can do last season, particularly in the second half of the season. So I want to see better performances from him and better leadership from him as well, because I know it's in there. Kyle Walker is a very, very capable player, so I know it's in there. But we'll get to the key players that we want to look at soon enough. We do that for every preview. Um, but yeah, moving on. I hope to see Pep set up the team a bit stronger than last time out. If we look at what we played against Newcastle with last season, I think both times it was a bit polarizing, the two games. The first game 3-3, we played that at St James's Park. Um, Things were not really clicking for us yet at that point in the season. I think it was our third game of the season of last season, and Bernardo Silva scored in that game, if I remember correctly. I think he brought the game to 2-1. We were down 2-0, and he brought the game to 2-1. It was a very, what's the word I'm looking for? Surprising. I'll go with surprising. It was a very surprising start to the game, that 3-3 game. Newcastle seemed very, very strong. They were very combative. Unlike Sevilla, they will be pressing us because they are one of those teams that work very, very hard, especially in the midfield area. And that 3-3 game last season definitely showed it. They also showed that they are one of the more clinical teams in the league. They might not create too many chances, specific to last season, of course. They didn't really create too many chances for the majority of the season, but when they did, their players were capable of finishing them off. Amiran had his run of where he was just cleaning up goals and assists basically every week. Isak was doing Isak things. Obviously, he signed in the second half of the season, but they needed a player like him, and he was injured for a lot of the season as well. Actually, did they sign him in the summer window last year? Actually, yeah, I think Isak started the season, but he didn't play much because of his injuries. I think that was the situation with him. But what I'm trying to say is we can't allow Newcastle to have the same types of chances that Sevilla did, or the same number of chances. I think now how their system is worked, I think they'll create a lot more than what we would have seen from them in both games last season. I think Eddie Howe's philosophy is really getting through to the team, and he's further building the team that he wanted. And players like Bruno Guimaraes, Joe Linton, even Tonali now, these guys will be offensive threats in terms of creating chances and even getting on the end of them. And even though it's the first game at the Etihad and we should be playing like we have something to prove, Newcastle is a team now who has just made the Champions League. I'm sure they want to make the Champions League again next season and maintain their Champions League status, as well as go out in the Champions League and give a good account of themselves. So I think this is a very dangerous team, one that will be aiming for that top five positions. By the way, I know I already gave you guys my season's predictions for all the teams. At the end of the window, probably in that first week of September after the window shuts, I will be giving an updated list because there are some things I've seen from Chelsea that has definitely changed my opinion on where they should be finishing, and there is a lot that I've seen from teams like Liverpool that I think will change where I initially put them as well. Similar to Arsenal in regards to business that they've done, the lack thereof, as well as injuries that might potentially change their positions in where I initially predicted. And stuff like, Harry Kane leaving Spurs. Again, a lot of stuff happening, and I think there's a lot more to happen in the transfer window as well. So updated season's predictions will be coming in that first week of September. So definitely stay tuned for that. In that 2-0 game against Newcastle, though, I think we saw a much better version of Manchester City. One of our better games, or one of our best games in the Premier League season. We won 2-0, but I do think that the performance itself warranted more than a 2-0 result. It just speaks to how well Newcastle still played in that game. We just outplayed them. Phil Foden in that particular game on the right wing, man was on smoke, yo. He opened the scoring, if I can remember correctly, and he was just a brilliant, brilliant spark throughout the entirety of the game. Sadly, he got his appendix issues coming up after a game like that when he should have went on to start in probably every single game throughout the end of the season, but ended up perfectly fine. Went on and won a trouble anyways. But that tells me that Phil Foden still has that factor that we all love as Manchester City fans to come on and influence games. He has it in him to just be that spark, just go out there and annihilate teams. And let's just get right in it, man. Phil Foden is one of those players that I'm looking at to go out there and execute, go out there and help us to go and win this game. I know Foden gets picked in this a lot in terms of players I'm watching to go and influence the next game. But come on, I've been bigging him up since last season, saying he's going to be one of our main midfield players, that he's going to transition into the midfield finally. He's going to help us go on and have a great season. I don't think he hit the heights that we would have expected from him last season after he got his hat trick against Manchester United in last season's derby at home. He didn't really keep up that hot vein of form for too much longer after that, is what I'll say. So at that point in time, in that 6-3 game, you would have been seeing Foden and saying, you know what? He's going to have an amazing season. It didn't really turn out like what we expected. Now, in this season, I expect him to do that from the midfield. I think he definitely can. And that this first game at home, all the fans will be behind him. I'm sure this game is sold out. I didn't check, but I am 100% sure that this game would have been sold out. All the fans will be looking at Foden to start, especially since KDB is out. You are expected to be that main guy in the midfield. I don't think the midfield will be as packed as it was against Sevilla, because I do think Newcastle will press us. That will leave space, and they also want to create chances of their own, particularly in transition. But that will give us transitional opportunities of our own against them. And Phil Foden is the perfect player, in my opinion, to capitalize on those types of moments in the game. So I'm looking at Phil Foden and saying, if we are going to get anything out of this, you are going to be a key player in this game. And that moves me on to our next player. And who else but the big man, the Viking himself. Didn't have his best of games against Sevilla, but look at that Burnley game. We know this guy's on smoke. We know what happens if you give this guy chances. So don't count him out after one game and be thinking that Erling Haaland isn't going to come back and bag at least one goal in this game. Captain him in your FPLs. Only way you're not supposed to be captain Erling Haaland is if you think somebody is planning to score a hat trick this game week. But one thing I know for sure is that Erling Haaland will want to bag at least one goal on the first game at the Etihad this season. So I'm looking at Erling Haaland. Frustrating game for him last time out. There will be a lot more space and opportunities for him to get passes fed into him or even crosses fed into him in this type of game. And I'm sure that Erling Haaland will improve on his previous performance. So he's another player that I'm looking at and saying, if we are going to get anything out of this, link up with Foden, man. Give me something that tells me, show me something in the first 15, 20 minutes as to why I was right to pick you. And picking Haaland is a bit of a cheat code as a main influencer in a game, but I do think he'll play a very, very big role in this game. And to the surprise of a lot of you guys watching, by the way, like and subscribe before I give you guys the last one. But the third player, again, might be a bit of a surprise. But I'm looking at you and saying, for me, I definitely think you are going to start. Pep loves starting this player. And again, you did not have one of the best games last time or yesterday against Sevilla. So I'm looking at a much better performance from you. You already know there are a lot of haters on your name. You have to shut them up with good performances. And this player that I'm speaking of is Manuel Akanji. Now, I could have went to Ederson. I could have gone to Rodri. I do think both of these players will be playing a key role in the game. But like I said, Pep clearly seems to like Akanji's profile. He's good on the ball. I think probably outside of getting Vardial, before we got Vardial, if you look at our centre back options, he's probably our second best centre back on the ball. Only John Stones is who I'd put above him in terms of better than him on the ball. Now Vardial is in. I would put Vardial over him. So now he's third. But now we have six centre backs. So and probably Laporte is somewhere in there as well. He didn't really play much, so I wasn't really counting him as an option for the system that we were playing. But aside from that, man, Akanji, you've impressed last season. You've impressed me. I think you played above the level that I expected of you to come in with. But that game yesterday is what a lot of people would have looked at the Akanji signing and expected from you. A lot of mistakes, a lot of underwhelming moments, a lot of misplaced judgments. That's not what you've given Manchester City fans for the majority of your time at the club. And I want you to go back to those previous performances. Go back to the Real Madrid at home when you were drifting into the midfield. Rodrigo was so anonymous in that game because you shut him down. And you were playing left back at that point in time. Bayern Munich, again, people said you were struggling, but for the most part, you didn't get beat. We won that game 3-0, and you were a key part of that, alongside Nathan Ake in those defensive areas. So you have had massive, massive performances for Manchester City. In the Champions League final, you helped create that goal, drifting into the midfield, playing that Stones role. So to be fair, I know that Pep regards you as one of the mentality players, the key players who will go out and fight their hardest. I need to see that at the Etihad. I genuinely need to, especially after the match that you had yesterday. It was terrible. I'm not gonna lie to you. You did not have your best of games yesterday. And I know you can retribute that this coming weekend. So that's pretty much all I have for Manchester City players. And just to move on to Newcastle players, first and foremost, I already spoke on him just a little bit before, but Alexander Isak. Now, Isak, I think he will be the best player from Newcastle this season. If you look at the last season that he's had, he was definitely their most clinical player. You want to go from Newcastle, you're looking at Alexander Isak to come up big. I think they really missed him due to injury, and it almost cost them that Champions League place. We do know that Liverpool was making a late run for that last spot in fourth place. But the return of Isak and the return of his goals and contribution helped them to clinch that spot. And the thing with Isak, I think it's gonna be a bit weird to say, but I think he's kind of like the perfect false nine player because he's really good at dropping deep and linking up the play. He's drifting out to the right side of the pitch, he's drifting out to the left side of the pitch even more often than that. And even if he's staying up top, he's bagging goals every single time. He's fast. He's good with both feet. Like, he reads the game so well. His decision making is more or less good. He's an exceptional dribbler. Like, this is a top quality player, and trust me, I think he'll finish the season as Newcastle's player of the season. And I definitely, like I said before, I think he can crack that 20 goal spot, our 20 goal landmark this season. So definitely keep an eye on this player. And if we are not very careful in terms of watching and defending against this player, we will pay for it in the game. I really hope it doesn't come down to that. I really hope Father Ruben plays so he can Marshall and Alexander Isak. He's the one who I would trust the most with that job. But yeah, I think Isak will be definitely one of the key players for Newcastle on the weekend. Sandro Tonali is the next player who I'm looking at, because after that debut that he had, and he's coming from a Champions League team in AC Milan. I can't lie, I never really rated Tonali as one of the best midfielders in the world or with that potential. I always heard that he's had that potential in him, but every time I've seen him, he's genuinely been like fairly underwhelming. I leave it at that. He's been underwhelming every time I saw him. Those two legs against Inter Milan in the semi-finals of the Champions League, I remember very few moments where he was instrumental in AC Milan stringing anything. But to be fair, the entire AC Milan team was a bit of a shambles in both legs. So I won't put that just on Tonali's shoulders. But from what I've seen from him in a Newcastle shirt so far, albeit it's one game, so that's not much of a sample size. But based on that one game, he had a monstrous performance. So he's coming into this match now with, I don't want, not high hopes, high confidence. He's coming into this match with high confidence and good form. So I'm expecting to see that Sandro Tonali, the one that I've heard of before I actually saw him, because that's what I saw against Newcastle. That people were saying Perla region. That's what him did look like against Aston Villa. So um, I think he'll actually come up with a good performance again against Manchester City and be one of those main midfield players in that central area, linking up with the likes of Bruno Guimaraes and being a real threat for Kovacic and Rodri in terms of defensive areas. So I'm looking at Tonali as one of those players where I'm saying, yeah, you must step up for Newcastle to really get something out of this game. In terms of ability in the squad, especially in that midfield, you are one of those guys. And new signing as well, they paid a lot of money for him. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he will bring to the Etihad. Hopefully it's not much, but I'm looking at what he'll come with. And the third player who I want to highlight, just before we close it off for this video, it's still 50 minutes. So I guess we're hitting that mark, man. We're hitting that less than an hour mark that I spoke of before. Anthony Gordon, like I said, big signing coming in. This game will be one that they'll be looking at and saying, you know what, can he give us anything? If he doesn't, I don't think a lot of people would be surprised, because he has been a bit of an underwhelming signing since he went into Newcastle. But for me, that's all the more reason why you have to step up in a game like this. Prove your haters wrong. Prove your price tag as relevant. Like, I think it was 50 to 60 million they paid for you. You need to go out there and play like a 50 to 60 million dollar player. And to be honest, when I saw him at Everton, he was Everton's best attacking player the season when he last played there. And it's a bit unfortunate that a boyhood signing or a boyhood academy player for Everton left how he did. But now you're at Newcastle, you're at the big man table now. Like, what was it? It was top six before. Newcastle's resurgence has made it a top seven. That's what everybody's calling it now. You're a part of that level of team. You have to be performing at that level, especially as a new signing. So, with the ability that I know he has and the ratings that I have for him personally, I'm expecting Anthony Gordon to be one of those players who step up in the wide areas, show his creativity. He has a good cross on him on that left foot, and I think he can even score goals for them. So I'd love to see him add that to his game. Hopefully not tomorrow when he's playing against us, but I do think that he has a lot of ability that he hasn't really shown yet, or the full depths of his ability. Tomorrow, or not tomorrow, on Saturday, in 2 days' time, is one of those games where you have to show your fans something to believe in. I think more than Almiron, he can be more creative. So in terms of support for Isak in wide areas, I'm sure the team will be looking at him to really come up with one of those moments. And I think he'll be a key player to watch in the game. Look out for what Anthony Gordon might have. And all six of these players that I just spoke of, it goes without saying, I personally expect them to start. And all of these expectations that I'm listing out is based on them starting the game on Saturday. So if they don't start, obviously, you know, just take what I said a grain of salt, basically. Because I'm not saying they're nailed on to start, but I genuinely believe that they will start. Yeah, that's pretty much all I had planned for you guys today. We broke down the Sevilla um, match review after that was played yesterday, and now that was the breakdown of the match preview for the Newcastle game on Saturday at the Etihad Stadium. So hopefully I see you guys again on the review for this one, and until next time, don't forget to like and subscribe still now before you leave. If you haven't liked and subscribed as yet, definitely do that. Help out the channel. And if you already like and subscribe, you know what you can do? Share the video to one person who you know don't like and subscribe. But there's 79 subscribers right now. Help me get that one more, get to 80. The goal is to get to 100 before the end of the year. We're still on track. I appreciate everybody who has been supporting so far, liking and subscribing and sharing and commenting. Big up to Elijah Lawson in the chat for his comments. Guys, let me know what you're thinking about for this game on Saturday. Let me know in the comment section who you think are the players to watch from Manchester City and from Newcastle. Tell me what you think about my thoughts and what they might bring into the game for the players that I highlighted. Leave me some comments in the comment section, people. Until next time.